Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Which of the 4 trauma reactions are you likely to go into when you go into a high-stress social situation where people start to have disagreements with you? All right? Maybe you favor one type, like fighting. That's kind of my MO. Or maybe you tend to go into like falling silent, into freezing. Or you try to be really nice, fawning. Or you just leave the party altogether. So one of the skills that's so handy for people who have childhood PTSD is to learn how to hang in there when you're having a disagreement with somebody. Disagreements are going to happen. Now, these days, disagreements can get very extreme, they can get toxic, and I'm not advocating that you hang in there and just let yourself be abused by anybody. But to be able to have a disagreement with somebody is actually an opportunity to have a friendship and to learn something and to become more tolerant of variation in people. And so I'm taping this as we're entering into the holiday season. A lot of people are going to be visiting their families or choosing not to visit their families, but hanging out with friends. And if you grew up in a house where there was a lot of discord, you might have a fear of conflict that's so great that it tends to really dysregulate you and trigger your CPTSD symptoms when you get around disagreement. That can really limit your freedom and your ability to enjoy yourself during the holidays, or to have a job you like, or to have friends who are actually fun. So I wanted to share with you some notes that I took long, long ago from a book that I read when I was 16 years old, when I was trying to figure out how to do people because I wasn't very good at it. And this is the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I know some of you are laughing. I remember when I saw the title, I just thought I was so embarrassed, and I read the book secretly. I put like paper over the cover, and I didn't want my parents to know I was reading it. It was, I thought there was something foolish about trying to be better at having social skills, but there's nothing foolish about that at all. This book was written in 1936. It's still a perennial bestseller. It's incredibly helpful. If you read it, you know, of course you're going to hear dated stuff and weird stereotypes, but there's kernels of wisdom in here that tell you how to just sort of cut through problems and deal with life. And one of the big things here is disagreement. So apparently I took very careful notes on this section of the book. And I wanted to share with you because I think these are still good notes, and these are still instructions I want to give myself. All right, so how to stop a disagreement from turning into an argument. 1, welcome the disagreement. Be thankful to have this brought to your attention. So that's a big step up, right? From just running away from disagreement because it's so triggering. And that is what happens to so many of us with childhood PTSD, is just being around people, let alone when there's some kind of disagreement or argument. It's so triggering that it's just not even worth it. And we end up isolating. So getting out there and hanging out and going to the wedding, or going to have coffee with a friend, or, you know, spending Thanksgiving with some relatives, all of that is good progress towards you reconnecting and learning to calm your triggers. And as you know, I have a whole bunch of courses that will help you do that. I'm also going to follow up with a video here. At the end of this video, I will point you to another video. I always do that over here. I'll point you to a new video that is about how to do like ninja boundaries with tough home situations. So that will be here. But this video is about just how to handle disagreement in an elegant way. All right, so 1, welcome the disagreement. 2, distrust your first impression. Usually, first reaction is defensive, I wrote. Keep calm. Isn't that true? The first reaction when somebody's disagreeing is to go, no, that's not true. No, I didn't say that. No, because it's so threatening. A conflict for a person, especially who has CPTSD symptoms lurking under the surface, a conflict is so threatening, you kind of want to just like fight it, put a wall up and keep it out. Keep calm. Now, keeping calm is easier said than done for people with CPTSD, right? But it's a perfectly good direction to aim yourself in. Number 3, control your temper. If I actually get into an argument with somebody where I lose my temper, it's going to cost me at least 3 days of being able to focus and do good work. The dysregulation is so intense. I might feel okay afterwards, or I'll feel kind of numb after an argument, and then a whole bunch of emotions will come and a whole bunch of remorse, and then I'll wake up and go, I think I'm better now, and I just find like I can't read more than a paragraph. I'm reading it over and over again. I'm sitting down to write something and I'm just procrastinating, and I'm just losing everything good that I want to do. When I'm sitting with people, I can't be present. So obviously losing one's temper, there's a time and a place for it when you actually need to fight, but just losing it, let's just call it frivolously, where there's nothing to be gained by fighting, where it just happens and your emotions come up and you get all dysregulated. I'm just saying it's not worth it. You can get more out of an interaction and move forward faster in your life by containing that temper piece of it and staying with another aspect of facing a disagreement with somebody without losing your temper. Honestly, if you could never lose your temper, that's okay. The only time I can think to do it, I remember once when my son was a little baby on my hip and some neighbor who was on drugs came up and started screaming in my face. I screamed back in his face. That was a good use of my temper. I was protecting my kid from somebody who was behaving dangerously. Other than that, there are really few examples. Yelling at my kids was never fruitful. Always cause to apologize for losing my temper at them. And or anybody at all. Number 4, listen first. Let the other person talk and let them finish. Don't resist, defend, or debate. It raises barriers. Build bridges of understanding. Look for areas of agreement. All right, this is so counterintuitive to me and how I grew up and how I see things. But when somebody is trying to tell you an opinion, you may already know they're wrong about something. That happens, right? Like if you read a lot and people come up and they just tell you some talking point or whatever, go ahead, listen to them first, let them talk, let them finish what they're saying, and then don't resist, defend, or debate. Like, how can that be? How can we allow this to pass? But what we're doing here is building a bridge of understanding. And when you have a bridge of understanding, you will have the opportunity to express your point of view. You might, small chance, you might even influence how they see the issue. But most importantly, you're going to retain that connection with other people that's so important. And I just want to remind you, I don't think I need to, but I just want to remind you that no matter if people disagree, we're still one people and we all need to stay together. And those of us who are disconnected from other people suffer terribly, especially those of us with trauma. It injures our ability to connect with other people. It gives us a vulnerability that makes conflict something that we either avoid by running away, or we turn into a fake person, or we start yelling and ruin the relationship. None of that serves us. It doesn't serve anybody and it doesn't serve us. All right. Number 5, be honest. Where you've been wrong, say so. That's just good advice. I learned this when I used to hang out with people who go to AA. When you've been wrong, say so. I remember that sounded radical to me, but you'd be surprised. Experiment with it. When you realize you were wrong about something, immediately go in and say, oh, I see, I was wrong. If you can just say those words, it is so disarming to other people, and they will usually soften a great deal if you can just say those words when you're wrong. And I would add that look for places where you're wrong. Be quick to give that to them. It makes you more trustworthy and safe if you can admit that. Wouldn't you love it if people did it for you? Don't do this tit for tat. You're not necessarily going to get it back yet. But when you get good at this, at all of these tips I'm giving you, you're going to see that you have encountered other people in your life who are very good at this, and you didn't even realize that they were doing something artful. You just felt safe. You just felt safe and you maybe opened up to them. All right. Number 6, promise to think over their ideas and consider them carefully and mean it. They may be right. I love that. Promise to think over their ideas. Say, yeah, okay, thank you. All right, let me think that over. I'm going to really consider that. I think you might be right. Can you imagine saying that to people with whom you disagree? It's very comforting to them. It alleviates a lot of the frustration that they have in the conflict. I know how much you would like to hear that from another person, and again, you probably won't. What I'm saying here are very basic skills, but hardly anybody uses them. But trust me, you getting good at it will tend to transform the kinds of relationships you have and bring more people in who are capable of this level of respectful conversation and disagreement and connection. So you're going to win no matter what here. Number 7, thank them sincerely for their interest. Think of them as good people who really want to help you. Okay, that kind of speaks for itself, but thank them for being interested enough to tell you, yeah, thank you for talking to me about that. And when you think of them as people who really want to help you, you come off that way to them. And believe me, that is how they see themselves. A lot of times, especially with CPTSD, we think people are out to get us. We think they're out to shame us or trying to manipulate us. And that is possible at times. And if that's your judgment about a situation, don't even worry about being elegant with these people. Protect yourself. But of course, there are people you want to do better with. Think of them as people who really want to help you. That is a level of trust that you may not have. And the good thing about it is, just because you extend that point of view towards somebody or that attitude towards somebody, of trusting that there's somebody who really wants to help you, if you're ever proven wrong, whoop, you can have a boundary. No problem, okay? Number 8, postpone action to give both sides time to think through the problem. This one really gets into some of the tips I give all the time for conflict with CPTSD. Postpone any action to give both sides time to think through the problem. Suggest a meeting later that day or the next day when all the facts are brought to bear. And I would add, when dysregulation has been brought back down and you can hear again and you can think again. All right. Prepare for this conversation later in the day by asking, could they be right or partly right? So you ask yourself that. Also, does my reaction relieve the problem or does it make it worse? So does my reaction trying to convince them of something otherwise, does it relieve the problem of disagreement or the world problem that you're disagreeing about, or does it make it worse? So if we're arguing about like the role of social media in driving division among people, if I go in and I go, no, it does drive division among people, you idiot, my reaction is making it worse, all right? So when I'm able to be patient and listen, I'm doing my one person part in making it better. And that's the only way we change these things, is that enough people dedicate themselves to being more patient and open-minded towards other people, even if you don't change their mind towards their views. Also, will my reaction draw my opponent closer to me or drive them away? Will my reaction elevate the opinion that other good people have of me? And that's a good one. I just remember once flying into, I'd have to say, a rage at the bank once. They had accidentally shared my bank account with somebody else in my family who should not have had access to my bank account. And I didn't know anything about it. I just discovered when I looked in there. And I was really mad. And the person I was talking to was probably kind of new and scared on the job and not very good at customer service. And I guess I didn't feel like they were giving me the appropriate, I'm so sorry, that should never happen. They were just like, ma'am, you're going to have to calm down. And if you've ever been told, ma'am, you have to calm down, you kind of know it can be very triggering to hear that. It can feel like a total invalidation of what you need. The worst thing about this thing and why it sticks in my memory and why it sort of goes down in history in my family is that my young son was with me at the bank. I think he was about 6 or something, and he was mortified because I was yelling at somebody in the bank. So my 6-year-old son had a good opinion of me, and when he saw me lose my temper with a bank teller, his good opinion of me was hurt, and that was devastating to me and so not worth it. And for the record, I did go back to the bank and to the person I yelled at later, after I had used my tools, written my fears and resentments, meditated, talked to my friend, gotten straight, like what just happened there, what happened to me. And I went in, and without making excuses, I just wholly apologized to her. And I did it where other people could hear, because I'm sure that was a shaming experience for her. One of these days I want to make a video about customer service trauma, how providing customer service or on the receiving end of customer service, we've all had trauma. And this is, before I was Crappy Childhood Fairy, I 2 jobs before that, for years I was a consultant in customer service, and I would go around and train teams on how to handle people who lose their temper. And it was actually a really wonderful job for me to learn some of this stuff that I needed to learn as well, and I needed to embody. And I don't think I'd be here now if I hadn't had that experience. But what I learned on that job, I could walk into a group of people who were totally bummed out and miserable that they had to go to a training, and I'd say, so who here has had a terrible customer experience? Every hand would go up. And I'd call on people and let them tell their stories, and we'd give it like an hour. And by the end of the hour, everybody was so worked up and they were kind of resentful. And then I would turn the tide and say, now who here has had an amazing customer experience that like made you cry? It was so beautiful. And most of the hands went up, and they began to tell those stories. And soon all the people who had hated coming to my training were loving the training, and they were super receptive to hearing my tips on how to do this. So I think that was training for what I'm doing right now, and even in this message. We'll talk about that one day, customer service itself, what you can do on either end of it to bring it down so it doesn't turn into dysregulation or hurting other people. So we were talking about preparation for this talk that you would have with somebody when a disagreement has started to get kind of difficult. When you prepare to talk again, you ask yourself, after the things we've been talking about, will I win or lose? What price will I pay if I win? Okay? And if I'm quiet, will it blow over? So that's a really good question for those of us who freeze in the situation. If I'm quiet, will it actually blow over? And sometimes it won't. Sometimes the problem will persist, and it requires that we speak up for ourselves. But if the problem will blow over if we're quiet, it is worth considering being quiet. Not because we're saints necessarily, but because we care about how we affect other people, and also because with the tendency to get dysregulated, it's not worth it. It's not worth being right or proving yourself right or squeezing an apology out of another person if that's the price that you're going to pay. It's not even worth it for you, and it's certainly not great for everybody who has to hear it. And finally, is this difficult situation an opportunity for me? And I'm just going to say, if you are actively working on your healing from childhood trauma, these conflicts, as long as there's no risk of violence or abuse, it's just a disagreement, it's something that you recognize as triggering and you'd like to do better, it's a fantastic opportunity. The stakes are actually very low, usually. You're not going to lose money, you're not going to get hurt. You're just going to get to practice these more gentle skills of listening and being open to somebody and staying connected with them while a disagreement is being discussed. So that was part of the preparation. Then you get together. This one I find kind of challenging, but it's here in the notes that I took when I read the book. When one person yells, the other person should listen. Okay, when I think about that, yes, they should listen. Because the alternative is to yell back, is to like freeze or yell back. So listen. What I anticipate is for a lot of people, listening to a yelling person is going to activate so much old trauma, it feels undoable. And I'm just going to say, use your judgment about that. All right, my 10th thing was, best way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. That's how you win an argument. Don't even have an argument. Don't argue. And over my lifetime, I would just say I've come to really understand the wisdom of that. There's so many better ways to work out peace and negotiate what's needed between people than arguing. The next one is, never try to make the other person wrong with a word or a look. Oh, I'm so sensitive to that. Just this morning, I said to my husband, I said, do you think you could yield a little bit about having the whole oven on Thanksgiving for this one thing you're making and causing other people to have to cook at another house? And he looked at me and he went, I can't do it. I can't make my eyebrows do different things. But he made me wrong with a look, like, how could I ask him for that? And you know what happened? I got defensive. I started wanting to make him wrong. And we did get that one worked out. It was so funny because right after we had that discussion, I saw this. It came up. It came into my face. It was like the best thing. So right away I sat down and I made this video. But don't try to make the other person wrong with a word or a look, like, okay, or, oh. All right, that's how we do it. You know how it feels when it's done to you. If you're going to try to prove anything, do it subtly. Okay. I take that to mean don't get in there and go, first of all, you're wrong because you're an idiot. Second of all, don't you know that on this date they did this and the amount of money was this and blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to hear it. So you do it subtly. You do it subtly. The second to the last point that I wrote down for myself here is teach as if they taught themselves. And that one has taken me years to really grasp. But when you tell people, when you tell them how to think about something, it has about this much impact. When you have an open discussion where they come to a conclusion themselves about how to do it, and very hopefully you will have agreement about what that is, right? Then they internalize it, they're open to it, they do their best at it. It's just a better way than just forcing on people what to do. The last point I wrote here was suggest you might be wrong and say, I frequently am. This will never get you into trouble. So first of all, who among us is not frequently wrong? We are all frequently wrong, and it's good to admit it even when you know you're right. Say, well, I could be wrong. I often am. And that is a way that you create an opening and a humility that helps people bring their wall down and stay connected with you and keep talking to you about their point of view, and you still have the chance to learn. So those, my friends, are my notes from age 16 from the book, How to Stop a Disagreement from Turning into an Argument. I love myself for trying to learn that at a young age. I'll put a link to that down below. And at the very top, I'll put the link to our #1 quiz, which is, do you have CPTSD? I can't diagnose you with that quiz, but I can show you the common symptoms that show up in adults who had childhood trauma, and you can count how many of them affected you. So you can take that. If you want to learn my ninja skills about going and visiting high-stress situations, like how to really set a boundary, check out this video right here, Should You Visit Your Family? It doesn't just apply to families, it's just about boundaries. And I will see you very soon.